All right, welcome to another episode of War-Daddies with me and Dillon today, and we are joined by Ryan Rutherford and Nick Swope. Swope?
Hello, hello.
Howdy.
Nick Swope from Louisiana, Team Southeast.
Ryan Rutherford from Texas on team. You guessed it, Texas.
Because we got states that are big enough to warrant their whole entire district in the North American Masters. Texas and California being them. If Alaska had a player base, they'd be one too. So, let's go ahead and start off with Ryan. You were playing for Texas, and you were playing a Legion of the First Prince with Bloodletter spam.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll go into the list, I guess. The bloodletters here, went down in points by like 30 points. The battle score right before Masters, and still have their silly recursion mechanics. This is kind of just copy paste, Control F over and over again, see how many you can fit in a list. This isn't as many as you can fit because I was convinced that maybe having flamers and other toys is also useful, which they were. Flamers were the unsung heroes of the event. The letters kind of just they did more than people expected them to most of the time. But then the rest of this is just Legion of the First Prince stuff. Bellicor does still probably the most underpointed model in the game just because his ability is so strong. Does require visibility though, so a number of my opponents were clever enough to just leave their fun toys in obscuring, so I couldn't turn them off until they got to do their fun stuff with them, so they could actually play the game with their toys, I guess.
Nerds.
Yeah, weirdos. And then the screamers in here were just what I had points left for. Honestly, to be better as Furies. I actually, in one of my games, I played against Beasley from up to the Northwest, who was also the other person running Legion of the First Prince, and with a very different style list. And we had a long chat afterwards about how we would kind of improve the lists. And there's a better version of this, I think, that we both kind of came to. Although we still have slightly different ideas about it, but yeah, you see Beasley's list. He had a bunch of blood crushers, only one block of blood letters. After our game, we kind of agreed that 2 blocks of blood letters is definitely almost required, I think, for this list. But the blood crushers actually did way better than I thought they would.
Really?
So yeah, they provided more value because you can bring them back right after they die. Um, so you can use them more expendably. The screamers can't come back after they die. The only thing I can bring back in this list is bloodletters and flamers. So dumping this 2 screamers and 1 block of bloodletters to have 3 things of 3 blood crushers is might be the way forward with this. But anyways, it was a good grindy list. The battle tactic cards are attuned in Wrathful, which is basically I'm going to go first, I'm going to score 20 points, and then we're going to ride this game out and see what happens.
Yeah, and then deal with it.
Yeah, I tried playing Legion when it first came out, when Bloodletters were 400 points, and yeah, that wasn't fun. They were fun, but you get that many points drops, and it's it's looking a lot better.
Yeah, the point cuts really help the bloodletters out. Because this was especially the recursion. It's just 4. It's like 120, not super tanky wounds. They're only 5 up, 6 up. One of them gets a 4 up because you get them the little Legion buff. But then but they recur as long as they're in combat. So anything that doesn't delete them entirely typically gets grinded out by them. Although other armies that grind really well and heal, like Sylvaneth and whatnot, can that aren't going to get deleted by 20 bloodletters with no offensive buffs, give this list a bad time because their monsters will just sit in combat with you and grind you out because they do way more damage than your bloodletters will do.
So were they working on just matching you into lists that you could just grind with unbuffed bloodletters and just grind consistently?
For the most part, yeah. For most of my pairings, I did. I didn't realize. Part of it was my own fault because I felt kind of okay going into Sylvaneth until I got paired into Sylvaneth, which was the first game, and I realized what a bad matchup that was. I realized very quickly that unless my opponent misplayed massively, which he didn't. The It's very hard to do enough, like to make enough damage stick to delete the major threats here. They still scored kind of okay into that game. I definitely could have scored better if I'd played better, or if I'd understood that matchup better. But it just wasn't an amazing matchup. I mean, the list is almost kind of designed to be able to take bad matchups, though. Like that's kind of like if you any list running a tuned Wrathful is really going out there to try to score a bunch into bad matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Because even a good matchup, your score cap is 70 because of Wrathful. So even into bad matchups, you can score like a lot. I don't know that any of as long as you go first into most of these lists, it's really hard to get completely blown out. You know, I mean, depending on what you qualify as a blowout, but it's hard to score. Like you can score reliably around 40 points, even if a match really doesn't go your way. So um, you can't really stop your opponent from scoring a lot, but you can at least contribute score to your.
Yeah, and those Sylvaneth look like they're just trying to just do free tactics the whole tournament.
It's really hard for Legion to stop the tactics in this army. It's really good at scoring. It's really good at mobility and fighting. We've played on a condensed map. We played on linked ley lines, which I thought would be okay because it would force everything to. But he just, I mean, when everything heals and your damage doesn't activate that well, he can just
Mm-hmm.
consolidate everything into one block of bloodletters at a time and just delete them. Um, so, but still, I mean, it was a great game, great opponent. I learned that game. I hadn't played Legion of the First Prince into Sylvaneth, so that was information on my part. My later games, a lot of them were pairing into things that were pretty like swingy or like honestly good matches. I felt pretty confident going into most of them. The only one that I felt kind of iffy about was the last one, which is the other game that I lost. That was into ogres, and ogres just have the output to just lift bloodletters.
Everything. Mm-hmm.
If you can't I mean, and Fred's a great opponent. So, like I was saying with Bellacor's thing, like this army, it would be a really good matchup in my favor if Bellacor's abilities went off all the time. Um, but they do involve dice, so sometimes they don't. He kept his Iron Guts in obscuring, so I couldn't turn them off for most of the game. I ended up having to turn off 6 gluttons, who I then failed the 3-up to make them stop doing anything. So they did everything they wanted to, as if Bellacor's ability didn't happen. And also Be'lakor did not get any of his 4-ups to strike first off, except on like one unit of 10 bloodletters right before he got deleted. So, um, not not but I mean that's his Bellacor's abilities aren't always reliable, and that's why.
Yep.
So, and I can't complain because the game right before this against Beasley, I want every small coin flip that could have gone my way went my way, so I couldn't really complain. What goes around comes around.
It does be like that. So, what was your role in the team? Were you one of the defenders or the
Yes, so the Legion list was mostly most often used to defend, which is actually kind of my preferred position in teams is to play something that is kind of reliable and can defend into things. Partially because you get to choose what you're like. You get choice over what you're playing into. Like you can, even if there are two bad options, you at least get to pick the less worst of the bad options, or you get to take the bad option and you know exactly what your job is. In So a lot of the times it would be put out as a defender on like a map that it was really strong on, and then we would just let the other team would play whatever they felt confident going into it with. To be honest, I didn't really expect the list to get so many favorable matchups for it over the weekend. I really was expecting this list to be grinding uphill most of the weekend. But there was a lot of other lists that were attacked into it that were also like meant to kind of do the same thing, but didn't do it quite. Like couldn't keep up with how the scoring for it went. Like there was a Seraphon source list that has like the same game plan. There's a bunch of variations of the source list that were there. That was like put a bunch of source, walk them forward. But whenever you put two armies that both have attuned and wrathful against each other, the one that has lower drops is typically in a much stronger position, and the Legion of the First Prince list is only 2 drops. So, it goes first. I score my tactics. You don't get to score your tactics, and then the whole rest of the game, you're trying to play catch up with a super defensive army. A number of my other matchups, I think I played against. I played against the other Legion of the First Prince army. I played against Beasley. And that was kind of a coin flip game that could have gone either way, depending on how all the little things shook out. Yeah, it was also on a map that neither of us really wanted to be on. If anything, I think the map kind of favored his list slightly, just because it was the one where there's only 2 objectives, but you have to control the terrain over the course of the game.
Mm-hmm. So you need mobility. Yeah.
So there's you can't just sit on 2, and also my tactics were attuned and wrathful on that one, which I was like, well, wrathful, I'm never gonna score unless I push through to your home objective. And attuned, I have to just walk to the center and kind of abandon some of the side things. But in a grind fest, it ended up winning. Like I said, a bunch of little things went my way. Soulblight. Soulblight honestly probably should have been a bad matchup for me just because of that same grindy monster thing, except for the fact that he just rolled terrible on his monsters healing, so Neferata and his Vengorian Lord died in a turn.
Was this JJ, the Great Plains dude?
No, this was Adam. The flamers, his Vengorian Lord was had the artifact make it immune to rend and shooting, and I'm like, that's great, flamers don't have any. So and then they dumped 18 wounds on the Vengorian Lord and killed it in one shooting phase. Neferata should have lived if he had rolled better on his heal for her ever. He did everything possible to heal her, and she rolled ones over and over again, so she just eventually got chopped to death by bloodletters. I made a serious misplay in this game that almost cost me the game. But beyond that, it was pretty in my favor game. It was mostly control. He still had his 10 Blood Knights and Vordry on the board at the end of the game. He was just running around deleting stuff, but he just didn't have enough things left to stop me from scoring. And then my other game was into Nurgle. That was into Jason from I believe Great Plains. This was another grind in the center game. The monsters kind of just died one at a time because they had to come into the bloodletters one at a time. And then I was just scoring. I just bloodletters recursion means they just pop off disease immediately. The Demon Prince died to a countercharge on turn 1. The Glockkin had to come fight 40 bloodletters on his own, so he died in 2 turns. Rodriguez had to stand in the corner and get Bellicord for 3 rounds because he was too slow to get into anything. And then it was just scoring. He couldn't catch up in scoring with Master of the Past and Wrathful, especially considering I only had 2 heroes. A lot of the armies that had Master of the Past going into this, or Intercept and Recover, realized how much of a pain
how bad that is
to whenever your hero targets are a Centurion Marshal who I'm just going to run around in the back and never get into combat if he's at any risk of dying. If it matters if he dies or not, I'm perfectly happy to just let him run around and hug Bellicor's toes for the game. The Bellicor, who is a 4-up ethereal, 4-up ward pass off, and kids can give everything around him strike first, maybe. And if it's intercept, I'll give the flamers or something, the other one, and have them just run around in the back and shoot stuff. Especially because Legion has the spell that can make something invisible outside 12 of it. So all the armies that want to shoot Bellicor or the flamers and whatnot, when I was playing into Beasley's Legion of the First Prince list, he has the artillery, which would delete flamers in a turn. But with the re-rolling cast, I just made the flamers invisible every turn, so he never got a chance to shoot them until it was irrelevant.
Yes. So you were just being a complete and
degenerate. Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah. Anytime if I was just any Bellicor list with a bunch of stuff around him is it's a list made to be a degenerate. You're pushing. It was the closest I could get to putting 21 Rock Guts on the board this time around, which is what I did last Masters. So
God.
I try to
Brian's
use
game plan tends to be push something to the middle of the board and make your opponent make mistakes dealing with it.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm gonna put a bunch of stuff in the middle of the board, and you have to deal with it. And if you make mistakes, I'll punish them. It's very hard for me to make a mistake when my plan is I push my models forward.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I still do. Both of the games that I lost, even several of the games that I won, I made pretty bad mistakes. But
well, it happens, you know.
Can't play perfect every time. So, did you help with the pairings at all for the Texas team, or did they just say, "Hey, you're going, deal with it"?
I was asked my opinion on like when I was or like it'd be like, "Hey, we're gonna defend with you on this," and I'd be like, "You got it." But for the pairings, I didn't really do a lot of decision making for pairings for the other players. I was more just asked my opinion on like my own, and even then, like when I was getting attacked, or like when I would be asked like what like for like my how strong I felt defending on a map, but then like I wasn't involved in the decision picking like which attacker we were picking. Not really, I don't think. I may have been asked once. I was hovering around, but mostly I left that to Gavin and John, who were doing all of the like pairing.
Yeah, that's the part I think sounds the most interesting, is getting to play the little mini game.
It is fun. There's a lot of strategy to it. I've done it before several times. Me and Dillon did it. Whenever we
came up to Missouri and clapped everybody. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've been involved in it before, but for this, I was not. I was not captain or co-captain, and you got to just trust them to make the decisions. And there is such a thing as too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to
100%.
Like, playing that mini game. So
yeah, usually 1 to 2 people is a good number for that. Any more, and it starts getting crazy.
Yeah, I heard the Great Plains had 3 they used. This was our Great Plains like real first foray into team event. And does Texas have a lot of team events for you guys down there, or is it essentially Masters for teams?
It's starting to catch on more. Teams has really become a thing that people are trying to get more into. After my first taste of doing a teams event was the U.S. Masters before this one, and I came back and I've been trying to get San Antonio. San Antonio's finally picking up doing more team stuff. We started doing team local events. The team GT, or like the GT that we normally run every year, is going to be a team event.
Sick.
Just because it's not teams to the size of U.S. Masters and whatnot. It's going to be like much smaller teams. Maybe like 3 or 4 people. Just to make it more manageable for like a local thing. But Texas has been catching on for doing teams. Has been really trying to do team stuff. We also organized like a small teams event like between San Antonio and Austin.
Is that still going on?
Before I got too busy to keep organizing it anymore. We did like 2 or 3 rounds of it. But we have
Taco was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we've been trying to get people more into teams, get into the team's mindset, get them experience. And everybody who's tried it loves it. I can't recommend, even to people who casually play Age of Sigmar, I cannot recommend enough trying teams out, because one, it's a great method of just it's a great method of showing up and enjoying the game with your buddies in a way that kind of like is like a good like bonding thing. Like you're all there together. Like even if you're not like, you're there with other people, so there's a sense of like community you kind of build in like your team there, like with the people you show up. Even if it's like 2 or 3 other guys, other people, other players, you're all there playing the game together. Trying like making decisions together, trying to like win together. And 2, it makes your games feel less bad when you're losing. Not everybody is gonna go. Most people, in fact, at a GT will not go undefeated. Something like 96% of the people who show up are probably not gonna go undefeated that weekend. And it makes even your losing games feel more important, because your team could still win even if you lose, as long as you keep playing your game. It also changes how people look at the game. Like scoring becomes so much more like relevant even whenever like there's less of an incentive to be like, well, I can tell I'm not going to win this game, so we can just call it here. Like we can stop playing the game now. It gives people an incentive to keep playing. Of course, there's some like there's two sides to all of these things. Like it also sucks to have to play a game out if you are in a real feels bad situation and like you're not having fun with that game anymore, but you have to play it out because your team needs the points. Most people though are pretty good, even at matches. Most people are pretty good about whenever things are got to the point where one player is not having fun, like talking through the rest of the game, and typically are pretty generous about what points you can and can't get. Some people, depending on how much it matters, and how how many points you're trying to like get through the rest of the game. So part of that's just like a community exercise, and I have to say, at every team event I've ever been to, I've had a great time. I've always had great opponents. I can't say enough about how awesome the opponents at the U.S. Masters are. Everyone there is competitive, but also on a great. All six of my games, I would happily play my opponent again. They were all great people. They were all playing competitively, but they were all great sports. Great opponents to talk to. I would happily chat with them, like in and out of the game. All of them were great, and I can't say enough about how awesome the opponents at U.S. Masters have been both times that I've been.
That's awesome to hear. I'm glad you had a good time. Even if you wanted to bully our Great Plains guys.
I didn't want to bully them.
You didn't want to, but you did.
Look.
He was given the opportunity to do it, and he took it.
Yeah.
That's not the same as wanting to. That's just taking an option that was presented to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's a team event. If you have the opportunity to bully someone, you're going to have to bully them. there's no other way around it. You need the points.
Yeah, I mean, look, there is that too. Is like sometimes it's like, look, I would if this was a singles GT, if I win by 1 point or I win by 30 points, it doesn't matter. It makes very little difference at the end of the day in a singles event. So like it's fine. We could as long as like you're still winning, like you really don't really care. At a teams event, you are incentivized a little bit to be like, well, I'm gonna try to run up my score and lower your score as much as possible. At least to the extent, like I was saying, that you're not purposely making the other person not have fun or like being a dick about it. Like like typically speaking, at the end of the game, if something I and I think everybody else is pretty reasonable about being like, yeah, obviously you're going to score. Like, I'm not going to take this objective from you. You are going to score that for the next few turns. You can probably get this battle tactic and get points there. Like, as long as it seems reasonable and it's just going to save you both time. If it seems unreasonable, then that's a conversation. But I don't think I've ever run into that situation or like at that point, you and your opponent both just say, okay, well, let's just roll the amount of dice we need to figure out whether that's going to happen. If it makes a big difference, you just cut it down to the exact movements and dice rolls that need to be done to determine if those points will be scored. Find out if they are or aren't, and then move
on. Yeah.
I was gonna ask, this is for both of y'all. How did y'all feel about not using differential this year and just doing raw VP? Because that looked a little weird from the outside.
You want to go first, Ryan?
Sure. Sorry, I know I've been yapping a bunch. I promise I'll give you a chance to cut in, Nick. The not using differential, what did make things more. I felt like there was a lot less really close rounds because of it. There was still one or two that were really close. This is actually Nick could probably talk because there was one round that was like super close. Came down to like one game over there by like a few points.
That was all our rounds.
Yeah. But differential, I do think, made it more like not using differential was interesting. Honestly, for the most part, it felt kind of the same. I don't think the differential thing made a difference in how many rounds we would or wouldn't have lost. If anything, it made it so that like like blowout games mattered way more in this. It felt like because a blowout game in the differential system is still going to be like like 18 or 19 instead of like 18 to 19 to 1 instead of 13 to 7 or whatever. Um, and but like in this, if one person wins by like 60 points, it sets your team so far up or behind, depending on which side you're on. Because most other games are gonna be I'm honest, a lot of games I saw were that the differential would have made more granular. Didn't matter. Like close games became less impactful because like every point, like when you get to that close, like the difference between like a 13 and a 14 could only be a few points, but that difference felt like it would have mattered more than the difference between winning by like 15 versus winning by like 20. Because it still doesn't make a big impact on the 60 point gap that's formed already, comparatively, as opposed to like a 7 point gap that would have formed, or something like that. Overall, I think raw points about about the same. It's just a little bit different. It's like it probably impacted a little bit in terms of like how the scoring was done, but from my personal perspective, I think overall it's about the same. It's just it's less complicated. It does reward bullying your opponents more this way, but from my personal perspective, it didn't make a huge difference. I'll let Nick give his opinion.
Yeah, so from having done two teams events, honestly, I went in day one not realizing it was raw point differential and playing specifically to like the breakpoints I remembered from the bracket scoring, and then I was told, oh no, it's straight points, and that didn't change much. I think it does kind of change what armies you want to bring as your just like point tank. Like you're going to lose these matchups, but if you can lose a matchup, if it's would have been 20, instead it means like the Sharks list we brought ended up being hey, we're going to throw this into our worst matchups and hope you can keep the differential to like 20. Rather than like if it was like if you lose by 20 it's the same as losing by 80, we probably would have selected something different. I was not part of the decision making on Sharks. That was Jeremy Vines, and I mean he chose well in the testing we did and all that, and the list came out great for just making it so even if I'm losing by 20, I'm scoring 50. So I think it might affect army choices at like this kind of like top end part, but I think the differential part, it definitely lets you do some things different than you would if you weren't doing it by this, but I'm not sure it really changed results and stuff as much. It felt like, hey, I'm losing by 26. Okay, if I can make it a 21 point loss, it did affect some of our games. I think against Texas, there was like a 16 point differential in the end, and if I'd been 20, I think it might. It's like, okay, well, I'm just kind of like, all right, I can't possibly get this. But then, like at the end, it's like, oh, well, if I get maybe 5 more points, this may affect the outcome. It didn't, but like I think there's some more benefit to like, oh, if you want everybody to play out all 5 turns, which I think is a real benefit of teams, is that basically every game, even the ones I was losing, is like, all right, how do I get the very last points where it's like I'm already down by 30. All right, I should just give up now, and like we'll just say he got the 20 point differential, where getting those last 5 points may have mattered. And I think in our game against California, I was down by 39. I managed to get the last 5 points on the last turn. Then we beat California by 2 points, I believe. Yeah. So it's one of those where I could see the benefit to it, but I think I preferred the just raw score. But then it also ends up like, I think at the end, like Northeast had to like lose by a lot in their last one for us to win, because we weren't 1v1.
That is a great point. It also matters for the overall scoring more because the differential score kind of flattens the points that teams are ahead of each other. Whereas if you get a bunch of blowout rounds, which like Northeast did, they get like an almost insurmountable lead early. Which I mean is a reward for playing. I mean, they played really well. Like it incentivizes, like it rewards playing really well. Another thing, Nick mentioned the game that Texas and Southeast played against each other. That's actually a great example of one of the flaws of the the uh, point system is uh, Southeast. I think the final result for Southeast versus Texas win wise was I think like Texas only had like 2 or 3 wins, but the wins were such large blowouts that it almost like if Nick's game had been further apart, had been more of a blowout, Texas would have had more points, even though they
With
lost
like 2
the
wins.
majority of the games. Yeah, from like because so many of the games were close losses, but the wins that I think uh, Gavin and somebody else got or had such a large point differential, um, it almost made it so that you could win with a few blowouts as long as all of the other games were just very close losses, which in a differential system does not work that way. Like would not be nearly as, I mean it's possible in a differential system, but it's not nearly as easy, I guess I would say.
Yeah, that is one of the things because I think in some of ours, like we were always close, but I think that pretty much most of our losses were like very small, which let us just keep it close. And then if one or two people blew out, then we'd have it. So I think it requires a very different, maybe team comp and idea, but also if one game's a blowout, well, suddenly everybody else has to do way more, even if you're already winning.
Yeah, I was noticing that as I was following along from afar. The the rounds themselves were looking very, very weird. From just it was pretty clear which teams had like read the pack well. Obviously, the one with like Madigan on it
Mm-hmm.
read the damn pack pretty well for how to maximize their scoring potential for that style.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I would love to play around with it some more. I tend to hate raw VP solely because of how uneven the map pack is. Especially when you have all 12 maps in there. There's a couple goofy ones where the score really gets out of hand, regardless of how pairing can go. And yeah, it was a weird one. I would love to have played that to have gotten more opinions off of it.
See, I didn't read the pack, so everything I'm learning is from these chats, and that hadn't been brought up yet, so I was unaware. I mean, I could kind of guess that it was just raw points just by looking at the scoring, but I I didn't know for sure.
I can tell you,
there's
as someone who did read the pack, I did not even realize it was raw points until I think midway through game 2 or 3 when somebody's like, "Why are you playing for 20 points down?" Down, and I'm like, "Because that's the differential. I need to get at least above that." He's like, "Oh no, it's just raw points." I'm like, I feel dumb now.
Well, as somebody who didn't read the pack, I actually did know it was scoring, but only because somebody told me. because somebody.
So what you're saying is your teammates really matter going into these games if they're
yeah.
going to let you know.
Oh yeah. The well, also reading the pack. There's a difference between reading the pack and like reading the
Reading.
pack. You know what I mean? Like, if you say I read the pack, but you just looked to see like what the maps were, then skimmed through everything else, you didn't really read the pack.
I looked for the best dressed award, and then I stopped reading.
Yeah. The and like there was a few other things in the pack that like didn't even see. Like the best list name thing, never even looked at that. You could tell when you looked at Team Texas list that nobody on Team Texas read that part of the pack. The tree, how they treated trees there was another thing.
It
in the
was
pack that's very
really freaking weird. I was love your opinion on that one.
It wasn't like it's just not familiar to how I've played it before. Like almost everywhere that I've played, Wildwoods and like Wildwoods and all sorts of like those types of things are treated as just like flat hills. They're just like they're a flat thing that you can stand on to get cover.
Mhm.
Like that's kind of what they're always treated as. At the event, they had the like tree like holes for where the tree's supposed to be on all the little cutout things they had. They also had mats that had all of like the like if you ever played on Tabletop Simulator, you've seen the like you could turn on like the different deployment zone lines and whatnot that are everywhere where the objectives go and all that stuff. They had mats that already had all that stuff laid out for it, which was fantastic. So great. But on top of that, they also had these little like wildwood cutouts things, like plastic wildwood things with circles on them where the trees are supposed to be, and those things were impassable because in the actual wildwood terrain piece, that's where the trees go. When you don't take them off, which is what everybody does. But that's where the trees are supposed to go, and since they're larger than an inch, you're not supposed to be able to walk through them. I think most players that were there have not played them.
Ever done that? Yeah.
A lot. It was in the pack that was how it worked. Plenty of people just didn't read that part, myself included. And when that makes it more complicated for anything with a big fat base, like monsters, because you realize how much that sucks to move around, or how much it's like cripples your positioning because you can just walk through it with like a unit, and now like, oh, now your magma drop can't charge me because unless you go all the way around this tree. Just like, oh, that's cool. It's just different. It's just different. I guess that's how they played it up in the Northwest. Mostly, it's just different to how I think it's been played down here. A lot of people just treat those as like hills or like cover that you kind of just stand on. I don't think there really was almost any cover that monsters or even things just with big bases could stand on. It also made it more complicated to get cover on like large units of infantry, like large infantry blobs. Like the bloodletters could barely fit on those wildwoods with the circles. To in a way they could get obscuring easily enough. In order to get cover, we have to all the models have to be on it. It was actually way more difficult with the trees and made piling in and all that like way more difficult. It just kind of made them more obtuse to play around, which is, I don't even know if I would say that I hate that, because it just adds more like the game isn't supposed to be played on a flat board, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's supposed to be terrain and stuff you have to play around. So like I don't even know if I would say that I hate that. It was just different. It was just different what I was used to, and you could see people who had brought like lists with a bunch of monsters. I mean, even the Centurion Marshal couldn't fit through the trees. He couldn't walk through them. He had to go around because he's on that big fat circle base, which was interesting to discover. As I was like, oh yeah, I guess he does have to go around. That kind of sucks, but like,
which would probably be like my main critique of it, when it's such an uncommon thing that like no other regions really are doing. Having everybody show up and then find out those measurements, find out those surprises, like, oh shit, my list that kind of like needed cover on, this is my game plan. Now I can't actually do that. A little bit of a, kick in the face.
It did affect our list building, I will say that, because Fred had made sure he knew that was happening before when we were list building, and when we were playing games on TTS and stuff, it was like, hey, make sure you actually follow this, because they'll be strict about it. And it was like NFL, like if you were on the circle line, you're considered over it.
Yeah, and like you can prep for it on TTS by just playing with it that way. But what I'm meaning is more just the specific terrain that they had at their event has some measurements in there. It from at least the pictures, it didn't look like they were all standardized like wildwoods and whatnots. It looked like they had a few cutouts.
I think the base cutouts were at least for as far as I could tell, were 1-to-1 wildwoods. They did have a smaller version of it with 2 little trees in it that I don't know what that's based off of. I don't know if that's a different type of wildwood I've never seen or something like that. Mm-hmm. The larger flat terrain pieces cutouts they had, I think, were 1-to-1 for wildwoods. The other ones, I'm not sure. And they also had other terrain. They had like other terrain you could put down on the board and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know. It was like, I mean, you could know the rule ahead of time if you again reading the pack. Reading really important for Hammer players. I know.
No way.
I know some people.
Fortunately, I'm really bad at it.
Yeah, some people still haven't caught on to this one fun trick that makes you way better at the game, and it's called reading the rules of your army, their army, and the tournament.
Cheating. That's what that is.
We're lucky I got to my army on this one.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to Nick, and we'll talk about how he was playing. So you were playing Sharks.
I was playing Sharks. I was originally just going as a non-playing coach. And then Jeremy ended up having a medical emergency, so I ended up having to take over his list, which I think he did a great job on the list. It's 4 sharks, big turtle, reavers, and the best spellcaster in the list, some eels, and the guy that lets you retreat. Was very bad about having him survive in most of those games. But it's basically it's taking the sharks. The sharks, whenever they die at the end of a turn, you can bring them back with a command point. Something has to die that turn, and you can't bring back a shark twice. I think 4 was the right number for that, and it basically gets to play a little sneaky game of, hey, you killed a shark. Oh, or you're not touching that objective that's close to the edge of the board. Sharks on it, deny you having more, or to take points. And I think in my last game, at the end, reviving one onto an objective let me then deny attune 3. So it's very sneaky and can like deny points. The way this was like game planned for our list was basically this was always going to be the sacrifice list, as in we find a wide map. So I didn't have to play most of the janky maps this event. I got to play most of the, relatively conventional, easy to like understand maps, and it's just spread out, shoot things down, like just maintain points, score as much as you can every turn, and just try to like minimize the score differential.
Mm-hmm. You're playing Soulblight, but with fish, yeah.
Yeah, we had 2 of those. We had Mackenzie also on Soulblight doing that. So it was basically, I don't think they put me as attacker on anything. I think I was pretty much always, we're going to find which wide map is up early, and then you're going to be defender on it, and you might be paired as an attacker into something. But it was basically, we're going to try to find, because our team comp had 2 large monster lists, and then this kind of has, bad enough matchups and the same things as that we were kind of hoping that people would just throw those at this and then just score squish as much as possible to keep the matchups pretty even. Like, to just like prevent a blowout was basically my goal. I think when I was talking to Maccabee and Fred, they're like, here is the amount of points we want you to score this game, not even we want you to win. It was, this is how much we want you to score, and do your best to keep their score below 80. And the list did a great job of that. I was able to pull out a few wins. So I think the first game was against Nick True, who has the funniest list name, Don't Let Me On Here, and he happened to be playing Stormcast, which, for the unaware, is probably my second most played army in the entire game. So I very much know this matchup very well, and just kind of hid as much as I could all game, and then just try to make it so he'd have to use command points to force the Paladors to reroll their charge. Just hold as much in the middle as possible, tank stuff, and then just steal objectives, and I managed to eke out a small win on it. The matchup goes really differently in Stormcast when they can never revive something because you never actually kill anything.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to squeak it out because it was a very wide map and we can't like use the mobility from the revive. He also had like his go turn with his priest, had 12 prayer points, rolls a 1 to whiff the prayer and not actually have the bonus attacks on all his units. That was very fun. That very much changed the game entirely because he was in position for a big go turn with Palador's extra attack because he actually had the 12 points. I mean, it would have been impactful, and I was able to just like run the little idiots away the entire game and deny points. This is a master scouting list, so you're probably just going to get master 1 in this list just by pinging something down or randomly charging a shark in and killing a little hero. And then scouting is what this list is really good at scoring at, because if there's neutral territory, sharks move up like 2 inches. Cool, you got scouting 1, and then you're just going to try to revive them later in the game to get scouting 2 and 3. So it's very hard to deny tactics to this list. And then what was my round 2?
That was your high scoring one against Jake.
Yeah, so this was against Gitz. Yeah, so there's a little bit of ruling confusion. It didn't end up affecting our game, but it technically could have. This was they got the really good pairing on a really wide map, and if you're just able, I was just able to like prevent squigs from charging with the Shark's net launchers, and because he was mostly cavalry, and it was super spread out, so like you can't keep all the squigs together and focus down anything. The turtle ended up just like surviving the whole time. The heroes ended up surviving, and it just, I think it came down to at the end trying to see if it was like a 10 or a 15. This one was really just Maccabee, Fred, and Walter just put together really good pairings for me on this one, and that allowed me to, yeah. So it was just like, this was like a probably like very neutral matchup in terms of scoring on a good map, and just like that game plan just let me keep ahead by just a little bit, like all game, and then at the end, when you have, you know, Rend 1 damage 3 shots, just kind of poking apart units of squigs which don't have a ton of wounds. He almost yeah, he almost came back on a couple of the revives and and the end of turn moves from the Season of Gron stuff. That is shockingly scary when you're like, oh no, you've tagged my guy. I'm no longer out of combat. It's very good at denying scouting. I think it's just the map situation and the -1 to the charge dice from the Sharks was enough to just like keep this always in my favor a little bit, because he had to approach, because it was the 22-inch apart deployment. His things, even on maximum move, are like getting 24. If I just deploy behind the line, it's very hard for him to go all the way up and get to me. So I think that one was really they did a very good job in pairings on that one.
And then you played against Tom Guan in the third round.
Yeah, so this was one of the, Fred says score 40, and I don't know if you can deny him. So I basically got to this was the one. Yeah, so this was the one where you can either turn off the pairs when you're underdog. Tom played this just super well, like an army with a ton of shooting, and he was like positioning around obscuring super, super well. And it came down to like I think I like had one turn where I got a lot of good shooting off, didn't do hardly any damage, and then it's like, all right, so we're scoring maybe 30, and I think I was able to teleport the Reavers on the off turn to get them to contesting, so I could get an objective, because he had to charge to clear the turtle and a couple sharks, and then sharks were able to, on the last turn, kill some twin souls off an objective and just out control them without fighting it. So this was the one where we knew I was going to lose, is just by how much, and just to take Tom off the board, and like, because Slaanesh was always a bad matchup into like most of our lists, so this was just, they're like, all right, we're just throwing you into this, or letting him have this, so you just take as many points off the board as possible. And he played extremely clean game, denied me my tactics super well, played what he had to. So we were happy with that. That was the super, super close, like 2 points total, like even with the raw differential. So that was very close. I think it came down to a tie on the very last game.
Oh my goodness. That's
so
really
it was
close.
Yeah, it was really close. And then I think game 4 was against Josh on Sylvaneth. That Sylvaneth list is scary. It's very similar to what Ryan played against. Soggy Drycha is terrifying, especially when your army's kind of relying on sitting around a turtle that gives you ward, and suddenly your eels don't have ward, and Drycha has shredded through 4 out of 6. Yeah, so I think this one was also on. I think this was the round where we were looking at the maps, and it's just like, you don't have great. There's not a great wide map. It's just basically, can you deny him getting the wholly across the board? And I did that pretty well. I think there was like they thought this was a red, and I thought this was like a pretty bad loss for them, and I thought this was a pretty bad loss for me. So it's kind of weird where we're both going in completely expecting different game plans from the other person. So I think it's one of those like it's weird in teams where if you're in singles, you're always going to go for like the win, and we're both playing to not lose by a ton.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that like in a teams event, you'd never get a game like this. In or in a singles event, you never get a game where both people are just like doing their best to not like have anything blown out or like lose like this. They're both gonna just try to go in. But because they both think it's a bad matchup, but because it seems it's like, all right, I need to just like squash score. I need to keep this as close as possible. And it's one of like the benefits of teams that it makes you play differently in matches. And then this was also one of the games I was taking a very long time on. It's very nice when your opponent knows your rules better than you because it was learn. This army was a quick as I can learning, so he was making sure I was getting all my rules right. Great opponent, and and I was taking a while, and it came down to the clock, and I think I ended up losing by 15-ish. But I think I at one point like talked to Fred and said, "All right, I don't have any like real path to winning this. Do I need?" So I don't know if we ever went over the timeout rules, but I was very much played my first couple of turns slow, and then would call a timeout, get our team coach over to me to see, hey, where's our team's position at? Do I need to push on anything? And then I'd play based on that, and I was able to just play it's like, all right, we're ahead. Just play cautiously. Do not do anything that could possibly risk you losing by 20 or 30. And that let me play a lot more safe and not have to like go all in and try to shoot down all the monsters and then leave objectives, which I ended up making a couple of mistakes on the objectives, which with Sylvaneth teleports, yeah, he ended up stealing some objectives at the end. So, but very good game. It was fun. It was one of those very interesting matchups that I think most people like would play completely different in a singles versus a teams event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and it's always amusing because you hear people like, yeah, we're pretty sure this is red, and we think this is red. And it's like, well, you both can't be right, surely, because
Yeah.
like one of you's going to probably have some slight edge somewhere on your scoring, whether it be tactics or being able to have more tricks like teleports and or ignore the wards or something.
I mean, it is a dice game at the end of the day, too, so
There's
even
also
some
that.
red matches can do some goofy stuff.
Yes, I'm
Speaking of
looking at
that,
glamour weave that has failed me so many times. Oh,
the,
enough lists were so fun.
that Dirthu did so much damage.
Every time I send Durthu in, it's 0. I get no attacks, and it's like, I had glamour weave, and they're like, "Yep, you still missed." It's like, okay, I'm not good with Durthu, so
Yeah, well, like having the 2-up rerollable, like the 2-up rerollable on his attacks is great until they have any sort of debuffs, and then
Mm-hmm.
you suddenly realize that if you miss a one or two of Durthu's attacks, your damage output has gone from a consistently really great amount to a that wasn't enough to stop you from punching my face in. Now, I'm out.
yeah. All right, so then your next round was against Connor.
Yep. My last day was against double KO in a row. So this was kind of one of the things where I think our team comp was very weak to KO. I think when we were looking through, like everyone was like, yeah, KO bad, or at best like super swingy, just because if KO gets the double all in super turn, like it's very hard to like stay in the game. So it was the all right, Sharks, even if they get destroyed on the first turn, are going to have things on the board on turns 3, 4, and 5. So that will be our best, like, we're going to squish into. This first game was a very good game. I ended up losing a hero and all my intercept targets, I think, very early, which not great, but I got in the position where I was down 20-0 and at the end of turn one, and suddenly all the KO things are in charge, shooting, and everything of all the sharks and the turtle, and I was able to slowly just chip away at that until like he had like only a boat and like one unit left, so he could never get more. So I would end up winning, and then I think at the end it just came down to whether his boat's big shots would end up killing one of my sharks that was in his territory to get his last tactic. So it ended up being a very close game and what we were kind of expecting, like just score as much as you can mode, and which ended up being very good. When you have intercept on a list like this where half your army is supposed to die, it becomes a little weird on what you choose the intercept tokens on. But because he was ahead all game, he eventually had to take the double, even though he was ahead, which let me get rid of the last intercept. So it was one of those games where it was like just a coming from behind the entire time, and then eventually was able to like scratch it out just based on how like the dice rolls ended up being. So it was a very good game, but like this KO list is just if you get the double, it can like just pull wins out of nowhere, and even if you don't get the double, it still has like so much mobility that after it goes in, just kind of dip out and then just like capture points and play the game after that. So it's a very good list, and it's difficult to play against, especially for an art if your army can't just teleport and move everything to the other side of the board the second like they go all in, which is kind of what this list was made to do. Is like, hey, this matchup that all our other lists are going to lose by 40, you're going to lose by 20, and it did that. It won this game, which was unexpected.
Yeah. How do you make your team happier? You win the game you're supposed to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was very very happy about that one. And then the final game against Kenneth is his list was a little bit different, but very much the same idea. I think Kenneth played it. So Kenneth ended up, I believe. So what happened was, I won roll off. I make him go first. Just throw everything at the back of the board. He knows he'd have to come up, so he just commits as little as possible going forward. Then he wins turn 2 and gives it to me, which I don't have really anything to like push him off of objectives. And then he goes turn, and then after that, he's like we're still pretty even on score, and then he just starts picking apart the army kind of slowly. I'm able to just like squeeze a couple things out. I think he has a little bit easier tactics than the previous game, so there's no real like denial of anything, and then I just end up trying to scramble for points at the end. Clock management ended up being a little bit hairy at the end because he had to take an important phone call. So he then like left something off an objective and didn't, and kind of ignored one unit, which let me then get like another like 8 points total at the end. But it was a very good game that if this had been like a singles event, as soon as he gets like that all-in go turn, it's very much easy to say, all right, that's it. We can shake hands. This is game over. I don't really have a path to win. But in teams, it's like, all right, well, I can't win, but here's how I get 15 more points, where I wouldn't be like trying that hard if I know I've already lost. And getting those 15 points, I think doing that made this game a lot more interesting, like the entire game all the way through turn 5 than it would have been in a singles, which was really like my whole experience with teams is that it makes your turns 4 and 5 and your losing games so much more entertaining and important. It makes like every last unit matter, which was, it's a lot more entertaining than, oh, I already know I've lost by 10 or whatever it is for the major victory. All right, we can talk this out.
Which I think is the major advantage of teams. It makes you enjoy games even whenever you're losing because it gives you a purpose.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the big things I keep trying to tell people is I'm trying to get them into teams everywhere I go. It's that, like, especially right now And the entire meta we've had this fourth edition has just been damage, 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 as far as the majority of people like to look at things. And that means that like a whole lot of games are kind of over on turn 2. Especially right now, we see baleful lords all over the damn place. That same ogres list that Carson made, that everyone copy pasted. Terrorgeist spam is starting to become a little bit more popular. A lot of those lists are just on turn 2, you just win or you lose. And like even in those games where it's like pretty clearly over, there's still something to play for. There's still an purpose to I flew all the way to freaking Seattle in this case to play a 4-hour game. Like more than 20 minutes of it would like to be, I'd like to do that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I do think that there's, like, at singles events, you could play an entire GT and never get to round 5, depending on the
easily.
List,
Yep.
You could have none of your games ever be full games. The other thing I like about teams is it incentivizes people to use a clock. There's a lot of feel bad moments people have at GTs that I tell them would be solved if you played your game on a clock. Like then whether the reason your game didn't finish and you lost at the end because I would have won the last 2 turns but we didn't have time or whatever. Then if that was your fault or not. Because if it was your opponent's fault, then your opponent would run out of time and you would win. If it was your fault, then you wouldn't, and that at least.
I really like chess clocks, and that's coming from the guy who basically timed out in almost 3 of his games. So, like, it's very important to make sure that I like it because it makes it feel like I know I'm not taking more of my opponent's time than I need, and it also, all right, this game's going really well. I can sit down and really think because I know, I've got a full hour left of my time. It's round 3. Let me make sure I'm thinking through everything because I know I have enough time.
Yeah, it does give you that space to think through your turns and like where you're at, or not, depending, or it shows you how much time that you're spending doing that, and that you need to just kind of start making decisions because there is some analysis paralysis that goes on. I don't think I came close to timing out on any of my games. I actually don't know that I've ever timed out on a game on the clock. I can't think. I might have gotten close on like 1 or 2 games, but I mean, in fairness, I'm also again playing armies where I just shove everything to the center of the board. So
yeah,
I build my list to avoid thinking too hard.
Yeah. A lot of my time was I was not as familiar with his army as I would be on most of my other things, which means normally this army does not take that long to play because it's like, I'm rolling like 3 dice, 4 dice at a time. But I was having to recheck my rules and like go through and like, all right, is this the right decision? Is that? And so it was like very necessary for me to be on a clock for my opponents, but it definitely does like there is also some tension on you've taken a long time and you're on the clock and like you've got to make the right decisions in like the last 2 minutes when you're running down. That is just kind of like that. If you make those right decisions under that stress, it is very satisfying.
Yeah, I'll keep being a clock hater. Everyone who's tried to clock me is usually like 45 minutes further burned down than I am. I hate them so much.
I've only used them a couple times, but it's a different experience, and if you're not used to it, it can be frazzling.
It's definitely off-putting. That's actually been one of the biggest curves in trying to get people into teams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think teams works if you don't use clocks.
100%. Like it's needed there.
Games have to be done. It is kind of intimidating to people. Before my first teams event, I never played on a clock, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. And then as soon as I started playing on one, I was like, it's actually really not that big of a deal. I've also never played against somebody who's tried to weaponize the clock. Really,
not fun experience.
It's not like maybe 1 or 2 opponents like during the middle of the game, but again, I've never been so short on time that it's been in a point where it could be weaponized. Typically speaking, if me or my opponent realize that one of us has used too much time, we'll just leave it on the other person's time for a little bit of extra time because the point is for both people to use the time fairly, not to time out your opponent because they forgot to click it back when it's
What? No way.
Everybody, no one does that.
It's hard to prove when people do that, but it's such a bad sportsmanship that
Definitely no one would do that at, like, Worlds or anything.
well, yeah. Worlds is a different beast, though. I'm talking about just the U.S. Masters. I'm talking about just the U.S. Masters, not the Worlds, not Atlanta, and not Worlds team event, because that's a different beast. I think the U.S. Masters is or the U.S. meta at least in that regard,
It's
is
very
good.
against that, yeah.
It's very against doing that and good about policing. Like, not I don't want to use the word policing, but like
Hmm.
keeping an eye on. Like, if you do that in your games, people are going to hear about it.
Yeah, you tend to get blacklisted pretty quickly.
Yeah, I will say the judges were very good about like, hey, your game's going long, making sure people were doing the timer properly. The judges were pretty good about that.
Yeah, I've been
And
looking for a delicate way to ask that. How was the judging at this event?
um, in game judging, I think I think everybody kind of agrees the proxy approvee channel should not have been a public thing in the Discord.
Mm-hmm.
For my round three, the ruling on Ideneth Tides got really wonky. I don't think it came up in either of the Ideneth games
Yeah, we
that were
heard
played
about that
there,
one. What all happened
but
exactly?
Yeah,
I
switching the ruling midway through was a fun experience. Also, I mean, that didn't impact me at all. It was just funny to hear about.
yeah, and then like as the Ideneth player, it didn't even impact me. It might have impacted my opponent's decisions on it, but I think I ended up using the other tides just because the situation worked out better. But it was interesting. I believe that a player told a judge it had been ruled somewhere, and there was not proper vetting on the rule in that scenario, and then that got transferred to me by a TO and one of my Maccabee, who not my team captain, one of the higher ups on the team, and with the TO, and they're like, "This is what it is." It's like that can't be right, but okay, a TO just told it to me. It got corrected after that, but
Good.
that was
Good.
a bit confusing.
Yeah, I was a little confused why a room that had a current Worlds judge in it didn't think to ask her, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
Can't bother the
yeah.
players though. I mean,
I saw her
Look,
fucking game time. Those were not done in anywhere near round 5, half of them.
to give grace, every event is going to have people who like I can't think of a single. I mean, there's a lot of events where people where when you're running everything, you have to make decisions, and sometimes you make a decision that isn't a good one, and they did
Mhm.
walk it back as soon as they realized they were wrong.
Well, that's good at least.
Um, the I just
it also only impacted a team. Like the two teams that I think really were given this ruling were also using the same list and the same ruling. So it wasn't like one team had
Mm.
like this ruling and the other team didn't. We both had it, and it had been clarified to both players of it that that's what was happening. So, but otherwise, the judges were helpful. I think got all the rules right. I think we had me and Tom Guan just in the like we had a scenario that may have impacted a battle tactic. We just called the judges over to do all our measurements. They were perfectly fine, very reasonable. Worked out pretty well there. So I think aside from that one strange ruling, they were perfectly good to us. I think I was probably a bit more not wanting judges to come over and say, "Hey, your guy is on the tree." So I was very cautious about making sure, "Hey, remember, the trees are solid here." Than like my opponents were remembering. So
yeah, there was the again. I think the rulings around. I also had like one or two times with some of my opponents where we had to call the judge over to see if like a model could fit somewhere or something. Like just like doing like just do for like measurement questions. Because like we didn't necessarily agree. Neither me or my opponent were salty about it. We were just like, hey, it looks like it does not look right to us. Let's just call a judge and ask them, and whatever they
Hmm.
say, cool. And the judge would come over, they would do their thing, and never had any issue with it. The only thing that irritated me, and this was more of a pet peeve thing, not like a judging thing. It wasn't even when they would come over and be like, "Hey, that model's on like a circle or whatnot." Because I don't think that happened in my games, but I think in like 3 or 4 of my games, and maybe this is a me problem since it's happened so often. but like they came over and were like, "Hey, this terrain can't be this close to the edge." It would move like one of the, those terrain pieces that are on the corner of the board that don't
Mm-hmm.
impact the game at all.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that you throw in the corner because the map says you have to, and so
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of throw them outside. Like these can't be within 3 inches of the edge, and then they would scoot it like half an inch further away. And me and my opponent would both go, "Cool," and then we'd keep playing the game, and that terrain piece would never be looked at the rest of the game. That only started to annoy me on like the third time. And even then, again, it was just more of a pet peeve thing of just like you interrupted with what like we were doing to tell us
Valuable
that
thinking time they're
piece,
taking up.
but no model even came close to the edge, like that corner of the board. But sure,
Yeah,
yeah, so scoot.
I think I had to be corrected on, having the giant terrain piece that is a boat that in some of these maps is very difficult to deploy
Oh
correctly.
yeah,
That I did have a judge like, hey, you need to move the boat, and me and my opponent are just like, okay, let's just figure out a spot where the boat would have been, where it would have done the same thing, and
Mm-hmm.
then reposition everything just slightly to accommodate that.
Yeah, like a
So it was
normal
never
human
an
being
issue.
would. Yeah.
Yeah,
and like the faction train stuff that makes more of a difference because like the faction train one is typically speaking in a relevant position on the board
Mm-hmm.
and can matter for when models are trying to fit between it and like the space around it. How many giant monster models have been like, well, you can't get past there because my faction train's in the way. Like it does, like the spacing for those does matter. So I don't I wouldn't.
it was the right thing. It's just
Yeah.
it's like once you go like 3 rounds and then told you need to reposition it,
Mm-hmm.
was it's like yes, it shouldn't have been positioned there in the first place, but
But
now
now
we're
you're
having to
kind of
figure
changing
out
the
a
game.
spot where
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that was so
where
a
it's like you
common
in theory could have taken advantage of it.
a common thing that keeps coming up as I've talked to a few of the teams. A couple of them will be coming on the show later, but some of the others prefer to not. Has been that the the judging team seems to have like again this is word of mouth. I wasn't there, but the judging team seems to have had some interesting ideas about what a super competitive event is supposed to look like, and ended up just making some rather silly decisions off of that.
There were some
That's
rules.
kind of an example of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I get like it was in the pack, so it mattered a
Mhm.
lot. Like they wanted to make sure everything was done by the book. In a way, they were almost in a way. I mean, there's I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with trying to make the event competitive, but there was some things that were like you are caring more than the people who are playing the game, and trust me, they
Exactly.
care. Trust me, they care. They do
Yes.
care. If it was relevant, they would care.
Hmm.
They would be making a fuss about how much they care about it. But like again, I didn't run the event. I always try to give grace to people who do run events. As somebody who has run events before, I give grace to people who do to like, people who are running the events because there's always gonna be people unhappy with a decision you make.
Hmm.
So I try not to be super like critical. I don't think they did that much like active TOing where they were like walking around like trying to like correct people on rules or anything like that. I think it was very very good like passive TOing and
Hmm.
like they would only cut in if a question was asked. They would talk to you about like what was going on, but they wouldn't make rulings or anything unless they were asked a question. Um,
I think they did a good job where like even if you called a TO over and then the TO is like, "Hey, this is a question from both of y'all. Here's pause the timer for this." Because there were a couple of like this is a very weird scenario and
Hmm.
like it's like cool taking it off of like this person who's like running the clock because a lot of mine went very late. So it's like, hey, no, this is a weird ruling. Like this isn't like you asking for like to try to like clock manage. This is like
Hmm.
something that's important. Like they did a good job of being very fair on that. So
Good. Well, I'm happy to hear about it.
they also had enough judges for the amount of players that were there and the amount of
yeah.
players that would call a judge over for things, which is a very nice thing to not have to just run all over looking for judges, especially
Hmm.
on an event in a hall that big. And I
More
think they
room for
had five or
judges,
six
reserved
people.
issues,
Yeah.
and other stuff.
That's good to hear. So, does the Southeast, that's what you're part of, right, Nick? Does the Southeast have like a team that is like on standby like all year that prep, or do you guys like get close to the event and you guys are then like looking to decide on your team then?
So there was So because I think our team got locked in maybe even before, or it was very close to when the original date would have been, because LVO this year moved. It then changed the timing because this was supposed to be at Hammerfest, which was on the same day as what LVO got moved to,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously caused a whole lot of things moving around and turmoil and tournament dates and stuff. So I think Team Southeast was like doing tryouts and like talking to people and looking at that, and then it just kind of ended up like being determined like really early in the whole Masters thing. Like I said, I was one of the alternates. Alternates played Jeremy's list, worked very well. So that was all pretty much determined, I think, roughly around October, and then, well, just because the event got delayed 4 more months or 3 more months, whatever the actual time frame was, that the team was like ready and like working on just like, hey, what do you think we're bringing to this? Hey, what do you think your role is going to be? So it was probably longer than a lot of other teams had their teams set up.
Yeah, the Great Plains, we were set up in June because we do a tournament circuit. Top 8 players are the ones who get the invite. And
Yeah,
I think we had 2 of our top 8 that were able to make it after it got moved.
Mm-hmm.
But like we were technically locked in for our top 8 in June, and then it got moved. And same thing, Ryan. Is Texas kind of locked in with people, or you guys also do tryouts and are looking?
I mean, one, it sucks that it got moved because it was going to be in Texas, in Houston, which would have been saved me a plane ticket. Sorry, Pacific Northwest. I mean, they did great, but also
it saved me a plane ticket too. So
yeah. But for the Texas team, um, it was pretty much we didn't do like tryouts. There used to be a Texas Masters circuit that would run. That's kind of fallen off. Doesn't really happen as much anymore. It was really more like the Texas community is pretty. The Texas like AOS community is still, I would say, pretty tight knit as a region. There's a bunch of there's 4 main clubs in Texas. Um, the Slambo in San Antonio, the Austin Weird Knobs, the Dallas Defenders, and Grand Alliance Houston. I don't know if they've entirely been subsumed by Harambe's Heroes. Houston technically has a few clubs, and there's some other clubs from in the different smaller towns around Texas. It's a big region. There's like a few War Gamers against Conroe, I think. But there's a bunch of clubs in Texas that, because Texas has like 5 or 6 GTs a year, they all travel and meet up, 5 or 6 times a year. So the Texas community is pretty close knit and in the know, like with each other. So there wasn't really tryout so much as the captain, Gavin, kind of picked people who were going to participate. It was mostly the same people that showed interest in the first U.S. Masters, that went there, minus the people that weren't really interested. We had to swap people out that weren't really interested anymore, or that didn't live in Texas anymore, like Tom. So they
Probably
had to
me.
move. So they brought more people on. I think everybody was locked in originally. I mean, like the Texas team was kind of originally decided upon really early last year. That was when we were assuming it was going to be in October. Um, between October, after it got moved, between October and January, there was some like attrition. I think 1 or 2 people got replaced because it was maybe even 3. I'd have to go back and were replaced because of the travel requirements. And also between October and January, a number of the people who originally committed to Masters kind of didn't play as much in like the tail end of 2025. A bunch of people either had busy holiday seasons or just other stuff going on. I didn't play as much I was playing a bunch up before like October, but after October, in September, I had a bunch of stuff going on. I didn't play that much in like the 3 months leading up to Seattle. A number of the other players were kind of in the same boat. So the move definitely did impact the team as a whole and who was going. I don't know how the team processes, like the team selection process, is going to work next year, as I don't believe Gavin's going to be captain again. So it's going to be up to the new captain for how they choose to do it. I don't think there's going to be a like tryout circuit, just because in Texas that would be hard to coordinate because there's so many different clubs, and the unifying mechanism hasn't been. Nobody's picked up the torch for running that in a while. People are kind of happy to just go to their GTs and play their games and meet and yada yada, and not like do the whole tracking thing we did for a few years, which is great for me because it means I get to stay the champion forever. There's never another one. Nobody can unthrow me.
Bullshit! I move out there for 2 years and y'all stop doing it completely.
Hey, don't take it up with me. Take it up with people who are running it.
Hey, I tried to steal Texas Masters as someone who doesn't live in Texas, so
all I did was
didn't work out.
All I did was show up and play my games. But nobody really wants to do the math work of it. The people who did do that don't really play the game anymore. So I don't know what it's going to look like next year for how Team Texas is going to be put together. That's really going to be up to, like I said, whoever picks up the mantle of captain. There could be some tryout mechanism. I doubt it would be a whole circuit. It might be like, maybe like a GT or something. But more than likely, it's just going to be based off of who has interest. Texas has a lot of great players, has a lot of really competitive Warhammer players, many of whom just don't travel. They only travel inside Texas. They don't like fly to anywhere else to do it. So it's probably going to be just the captain's decision and who shows interest and is ready to like lock in. We didn't really lock in this last time around. We were kind of locked in for a while, and then after things got moved, way less locked in. Way less locked in. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see. That's how it's worked in the past for the Texas. That's what's been going on for the past for the Texas team, and we'll see what it looks like for this upcoming year.
So I don't know if you guys know, but we have an event in Springfield called Summergeddon in late June for team events.
Yeah, and guess what? Nick and Ryan are going to be on.
Yeah, funnily enough,
Yeah.
now that you mention it, we actually do know
Funnily
about
enough.
that, and we'll be there again. We'll be there
To win.
Again. Nick may or may not be on the same team, but so we're just
Hey.
Hey, what do you mean? Hey, what are you talking about?
Hold on, wait. We don't let the Southeast and Texas be on the same team. It's not allowed.
All right.
I'm pretty sure I was the one wearing a cowboy hat last
He
time.
was on our team last time.
Oh, okay. Think if you wanted, you could take people from every different state that you wanted, because it's just a team event for people who want to go. But I have not played in a team event at all. I think I'm gonna try and go to this one because
Super fun.
It was an amazing time last time.
Ton of fun. The biggest hurdle is just getting enough people to commit to go.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have it, I think it's the most fun you can have playing Age of Sigmar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it looks like they had videos from it last year.
Oh yeah, we got at least one stream game per round.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really.
You can watch me forget one of my rules every single turn on the last stream game. Definitely forgot that my abilities turned off commands.
Oh no,
Yeah,
that sounds kind of important.
A little bit. If you look back over the rounds for the last year, you can see the suspiciously enough, the only people on the Texas team who went undefeated were the two people who were deciding what pairings everyone was getting.
No. That was entirely unrelated. Totally unrelated.
Completely.
What, were you part of that, Dillon?
Yeah.
Don't know what you're talking about.
It was me.
My cannons went 5-0. I didn't.
All right. Well, I think that might be a good point for us to end it at. Thanks for coming and talking with us. It's great hearing about how the event went, and I enjoyed just hearing about everyone's experiences. It's just a ton of fun to listen to people.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Mhm.
Really appreciate getting a chance to talk about it.
Yeah, give Gavin some shit because We were trying to get him to come on, but he didn't want to.
Yeah, that's okay. He's got a lot.
He's mildly busy right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's got a lot going on right now. So
no, it's all
I
good.
find that weird.
Just tease him a little. Oh, I don't know how much you guys travel. We also have Midwest Bash in St. Louis that's coming up. And do you guys know what Highlander is?
I do know
that's
what
where you can
Highlander
only
is.
take each unit once, right?
Yes. They have like a 5 foot long sword as the prize for the best Highlander.
Y'all better get out here.
Yeah.
It's been too long since I've seen your goofy faces.
What time of year is that?
March 13th.
March 13th. I definitely won't be able to make that one.
Well, undo
Austin's
that.
thing is like the week before that.
Perfect, so you got time.
Yeah, you're right.
Unfortunately, I think I'm traveling 2 events for the 3 weeks before that already.
How did you
I
do
might.
this?
Who knows? I mean,
I might try.
hey,
I might get killed at work.
Depending on how that Austin event goes, if tickets are still being sold the Monday afterwards, I might buy one and drive up.
They absolutely will be. This event got snowed out a little bit ago, so just got moved over there. So the more people we bring in, the better.
Yeah. I'm always trying to just tell people about our Great Plains events. Gotta grow it. That way we can beat Texas. And
Won't happen, but it's okay.
But I will say the Summergeddon last year we went to it, blast, so fun.
100%.
Everyone was like, not to make this stream about that one and to encourage people to go to this one, but if you're close enough to go, you should go because it was a ton of fun last year.
1000%.
It was a blast last year.
good.
Plus
Also,
the
Ryan, I need
St.
to get
Louis
with you
crew's
about
been talking a
Austin.
whole bunch of shit about it.
Oh, they're gonna get blown out this year. I don't know what to say. Tell Laurent that I'm gonna come out and we're actually gonna get a game in against each other.
Good.
You're gonna get matched against my son, and you're gonna be very sad when he does bad things to you.
I currently have a losing record against 12-year-olds, so.
Well, he's 13 now, so.
All right, I've got this in the bag.
All right. You guys have a good one. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
All right, have a good one.